Start streaming. Go. All right. Hey, everybody. We are back for another week. So, a bit of news before we get started. We did speak to Ben since the last show, and he's not going to be able to join us on a consistent basis this season, but he might be able to drop in from now and then. So, with that in mind, I think we are going to officially bring back the name. So, welcome everybody to Pete Carroll was right, the confusingly named Alabama football live show. I am Carter. That is Mitch. We are here to talk all things Alabama football with you. So obviously we have an actual game to talk about. So we're gonna review Mizzou and then get into a little Texas A&M preview. We're not gonna dwell too much on the game itself for Mizzou, both, I don't know, because it's Thursday and you've probably read everyone's takes and reviews on the game itself. So maybe we're going to try to talk about what we learned or things that we now know or think we know that we didn't before that game, what we can actually take away from a game that was a blowout and then got kind of when things were mucked up in the fourth quarter and that stuff. So, yeah, what's your biggest takeaway, I guess, from that game for Alabama?
Maybe start we did last week. Mac's pretty good.
Yeah,
he can quarterback an offense designed by Sark. At least we at least know that they work well together.
Yeah, that was. I was extremely encouraged by that, and I think my number one takeaway, if I'm going to push this into like, I don't know, take levels, I think I'm comfortable saying that Alabama can get championship level quarterback play from Mac Jones. Like, he might not be on that to Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields tier, but he's close enough. He just looked extremely comfortable throwing the ball to every level of the field. He was accurate. He was on time. He was good at climbing the pocket. He showed that same, ability that he showed in his starts last season to basically have a rusher bearing down on him at full speed and to still get the throw off and hit a guy in stride. So, yeah, it was like it's definitely different than when we've gotten used to. Like, he's not going to run that inside zone slant RPO 15 times a game and just mash the touchdown button on that because he's just, I don't know. I think we sometimes didn't appreciate how special of a skill that was that Tua had, that just not a lot of guys could do that. And there were all these people that's like, oh, he just throws slants. Alabama just throws slants, and like not appreciating how fast you have to process and how much skill that requires. So,
and how hard it is to defend, and what it opens up if you can execute it consistently. But yeah, I mean, I would go so far as to say, like, Alabama with Mac at quarterback is probably at worst the third best offense in the country. I would maybe say better than Clemson at this point.
Yeah, I have no idea what to make of Clemson on like a macro level so far because they have just not played anyone with a pulse. So I don't know if they're like better or worse, like whether or not the like having nobody back at receiver with Justin Ross gone is really gonna feel about them. But like, I mean, they're probably better than Oklahoma this season, I would say, because Rattler is not quite at that level that they've had recently.
Yeah, it seems like he's got the talent, but just like he's not the grad transfer polished passer that they're used to having.
Yeah, like he threw those 3 interceptions against Kansas State, and that was the most interceptions that Oklahoma quarterbacks had in like 5 years or something like that. Yeah. Like, it was like, you can tell there's a drop off in from what they've had with him just in terms of maturity level, I guess. So.
But yeah, Mac is good. The guy behind him seems to be pretty good too.
Yeah, like it wasn't all roses with Bryson at quarterback, but he had some wow throws. Like, not, and it wasn't even one of those situations where a guy comes in as a backup and just is like an overwhelming physical talent, and you're like, oh, like
Mhm.
once this guy figures it out, he's gonna be great. Like he is a great passer, period, right now. Like not just a kid with tools like that. I think it was on his first drive. He had that out route to Devontae that was like
Mhm.
that's a big boy throw. That's like the one that NFL evaluators always look at. It's like, oh, can he make that 15-yard out to the opposite side of the field? And that one was a laser. And I was really like I watched as much of Bryce from his high school tape as much as I have for any prospect ever, and I'm not normally someone who does a lot of that. Um, and I thought he had more zip on the ball downfield and looked faster when he scrambled than he did in high school. The thing I thought about him when he was as a runner in high school from the plays I looked at was that he was more of like a like kind of shifty and a guy who knows how to pick up yards but isn't like an explosive or powerful athlete.
Yeah.
Um, but I thought he looked quicker than I expected. So
I, I think he can. I mean, I don't know if he will execute it at the same level that Tua did, but I think he can, to some degree, run all of the same stuff that they were running with Tua before.
yes, like he did that plenty of times in high
Yeah.
school, and that was part of the frustrating. Like I don't know what their objective was when he was in. Like what were they trying to do on offense? Because it seemed like they were like it wasn't just that it was a lot of like run pass when he was in there, which wasn't helped by the quality of the blocking, which was worse even for the plays that he had the first team line in front of him. But also like they didn't, I don't know, they didn't let him run any of those kind of plays. Like they didn't really adjust the offense to fit his skill set in a way that I think they would if like Matt got hurt or was out with COVID or something like that, and they
Yeah.
had to make him the starter.
So this was kind of one thing I was going to bring up in terms of like things that might be indicative for the season. I thought it was interesting. They, I think on 1st and 10 in the first half, they were throwing on like 60%. I think the number is like 59%, which is like top 15 so far this year and
Perfect
it's we love that. We love that.
music, yeah,
And I have no reason to suspect that that would somehow go down if you know Bryce was the guy in the
yeah,
first half, right?
not at
Like,
all.
so I think a lot of the second half stuff was like just run some really like getting guys like Trey Sanders some carries, like just running some basic. They like the first half, the first half, the second half first down run rate was like almost every play. I think they were running on 1st and 10.
Yeah,
Uh, and so maybe and maybe second down was kind of split, but yeah, they were definitely not doing Bryce any favors with the play calling in the second half.
it almost seemed like there was a bit of like we talked about this in our group chat with Ben during the game, like when we were wondering if like when they had the delay of game that put it at like 3rd and 19, and this was right before Bryce got sacked and fumbled. It was almost like they didn't call a timeout there to like teach him a lesson, basically. Not in like a that's really harsh phrasing, but like to let him
Yeah,
learn.
yeah.
And it
I
seemed
mean,
like the kind of the whole play calling and the entirety of the offense in the second half after like that first drive with Mac, and after that they took the starters out. It kind of seemed like that whole drive was to kind of like make the backups do it the hard way.
you put a lot of stuff on tape, not just for Bryce, but for a lot. Like I think was the who was in. There were a couple. It was like split on who was in an offensive line with
Yeah, he
Bryce, right?
had
Like
the
it was still some of the starters, but
so he had the full first team line for like 2 plays before Evan Neal got hurt.
yeah.
And so then it was this for the next like 2 drives, it was the starting line with Kendall Randolph at right tackle, who did not have a great game at right tackle.
Hmm.
Um, which can tie into another thing we can talk about later, which is that the first line looks great, maybe not as dominant as what we had hoped. They have some depth on the inside, but the tackle depth is not great. So
Hmm.
they very much need Evan Neal and Alex Leatherwood to stay healthy. But when they started subbing out, they brought Neal back in because he was out of the tent and put him at left tackle, and then they put in uh, Chris Owens at center, and they kept Brown and Ekiyor in at guard, and then it was still Randolph at right tackle, which did not end up being a great combination.
Mhm.
Randolph just did, I don't know, looked a little out of his depth, I think, and I don't know. I didn't like. I rewatched most of Bryce's possessions, and I didn't. I don't know. I didn't pay a lot of attention to Owens. Ekiyor did not have a great second half, especially, and I don't like. It seems like he's a little tentative at times. Like he's not always 100% sure about the assignment, which got even
Mhm.
like it seemed like Mizzou on defense got more like complex and were doing more like blitzing more and doing more like stunts and twists after the game was out of hand in the second half, which
Yeah.
we talked about. Like Drinkowitz was pulling some Jimbo Fisher like play for the cover bullshit. Like it was
Mhm.
like calling a timeout before the last play to score as the game expired. Like, come on, man. Like, what, just come on. Like,
That's why these games, like, I don't. It's so hard to prognosticate like these games, just because Alabama could name their score for as much of the game as they wanted to. And I guess one thing I was going to say about the backup like O line play is that might be one area where a lack of spring practice really kind of hurt. Because I imagine the first team guys, there's kind of diminished like a fall practice is probably plenty snaps for the first team guys, but it's kind of those like second team guys that didn't have the spring practice that it probably hurt. And that's
yeah,
why, like it's probably good to get a lot of stuff on film of those guys like that you want to see them improve on.
yeah. Like in general, and this goes for the defense too. Like, I'm not really concerned about the, you know, general poor play in the second half. Um, and like I don't know, a lot of people were talking about Trey Sanders, and he did look tentative. Like I would put most of his, I mean, he had like 9 carries for 1 yard, which is rough, but I would put most of
Mm-hmm.
that on the blocking, but not all of. Like I don't know, there were times when he could have made more of it than he did, but I don't know. It's a guy getting his first action a year after he missed a whole season with a major injury, behind with vanilla play calling behind backup linemen. I'm not worried about that. I'm not really worried about the defense kind of letting up. And
No,
like Mizzou had one touchdown off one busted assignment by a freshman, and then another one on the last play of the game against Bell West. Like it's
yeah,
yeah, like there are some things that could be cleaned up, but when the game was in doubt, like when the starters were in, it was easy for
it was
Alabama on both
incredible.
sides of the
Yeah,
ball. Yeah.
yeah. Maybe we should have started with that. Alabama looks like incredible
Yeah.
as a team. Like they were, you know, prime like era first game of the season Saban. Like
Yeah.
not a lot of sloppy play. I didn't think.
No, I mean, enough has been said about Jalen Waddle. He was incredible. Devontae was great. Um, the first team line was maybe not as dominant in run blocking as we had hoped, but they didn't. Aside from the one play on the touchdown where Matt got hit on like a late blitz after he threw the ball, um,
Mm-hmm.
it, the line was basically enforcing social distancing against Mizzou's defensive line. Like they didn't touch him all game. And Mizzou doesn't have a great pass rush, but their front as a whole is pretty good. So that was very encouraging. Yeah, let's
It,
let's let's talk about the front seven now because that's all they were so good.
yeah, I think you may have mentioned. I think it was you that mentioned it in our group chat that like shades of 2016, just like dominance at kind of every position. I didn't spend a ton of time, a ton of my like watching time. I didn't get to rewatch it, so I spent most of my time watching the linebackers just to watch like Anderson and those guys. But I mean, that was incredible.
Yeah, they were so fast and so destructive, and they didn't even have Christian Barmore, who is
Right.
probably going to be their most disruptive defensive lineman. The rotation on the defensive line was not as deep as I thought it would be. They pretty much went with a 5-man rotation. It was the three starters and Mathis and Byron Young. Um,
Okay.
so, and they were all pretty decent. I don't know. I think we were maybe hoping for a little more from the defensive line. LeBron Ray looked fantastic. And I
Hmm.
think he's someone that maybe we have collectively underrated a little bit because he, got a little bit of time and looked pretty good as a freshman and was pretty good in the rotation role as a sophomore. And then I think he led the defensive line in tackles for loss last year despite playing like 3.5 games.
Hmm.
I think he just looked fast out there, and I think he's going to be like the packages where they have him and Barmore on the field at the same time. Like the two of them and Anderson is, oof. I mean that might be better than like the most disruptive front they had in 2016. Like that's like I don't know. I sort of was harboring fantasies that they could have even more depth of like really disruptive guys, like that maybe
Hmm.
a Boyd B would do a little more, or that they could get some interior pass rush from like Tim Smith or somebody. But I mean, if you have a 6-man rotation, which is what it looks like it's going to be with Barmore back, and two of those guys in Barmore and Ray are really like guys who are going to blow plays up,
Hmm.
that's pretty good. Even discounting that you now have Will Anderson, who uh, is apparently
I can't
nicknamed
believe
the
we.
Terminator. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of like going with another classic sci-fi reference that we should maybe just address him as Mr. Anderson. But yeah, I mean, enough has been said already. But holy crap!
I mean, just it seemed like there were not a lot of plays where at least one guy was just not blowing up the play in some way, and a lot of times it was Anderson because
Yeah,
I mean he's incredible. But like Moses was playing like prime, like 2018 level, like just incredible. I thought Harris looked pretty fast.
yeah. He was, I think, exactly what we hoped he would be this season, with like a year of experience to get to know what he's doing. Again, the guy played kick returner and wide receiver and defensive back in high school. So, um, but yeah, he looked like, we all thought like, okay, he's got a year under his belt. He's next to Dylan Moses, who can tell him what to do all the time. Like he doesn't have to think; he can just play.
Mhm.
And we saw in flashes of it last year, like especially in the last game against Michigan, and he was all that and more. Like he was so disruptive and so fast, and both of their production, Moses and Harris, ties into something. And I tweeted about this a little bit earlier in the week, but um, now that he's not working with a kindergarten of a front seven, we're finally seeing the schematic influence that Pete Golding is going to have on this defense. Like there was almost every play, I feel like they had Moses and Harris walked up to the line before the snap. And so they were showing like between, they're showing 5 or 6 potential rushers on every play. And then they would drop up to 3 of those guys back into shallow zones on
Yeah.
almost every play. This is the sort of um, if you bring that and it's actually a blitz with 5 or 6 guys, it's called a creeper. If you drop and rush 3 or 4, it's called a sim pressure, simulated pressure, which goes back to Golding and Dave Aranda both worked under Ron Roberts at Delta State around like 2010 or so, and that dates back to him. Ron Roberts, um, who was Billy Napier's defensive coordinator at ULL Louisiana. Now I think they've earned that. They've been pretty good this season.
Yeah.
Um, and who is now Aranda's defensive coordinator at Baylor. So that stuff is pretty popular, and we saw a little bit of it last season. We saw Anthony like drop into coverage, and when they blitzed a couple of times last season. But in general, they just couldn't do anything complicated up front because they were working with so many literal true freshmen. Um, and I wasn't thinking about it a lot at the time, but when I was going back and looking again, like they did it so much, um, and I love that because it really gets you a chance to get Moses and Harris like attacking and in the backfield like as often as possible. Like I don't think it was an accident that those guys were leading the disruption the whole time. And when you can get the two of them, as athletic as they are, involved in getting as many sacks and tackles for loss and pressures and all those things, and just play a lot of games up front, that combined with having Anderson and Ray and now Barmore back, I think he is confirmed to be back on Saturday.
Yeah.
This front is going to be wild all
Yeah.
season long, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. There was a fair amount of criticism of Golding the last two seasons. And I was, I mean, it's not that I thought he was great. It's just like, it just never seemed like fair to really evaluate given the injuries that he had to deal with. Like, and now, so, now early returns on having like healthy defense look pretty good. Bringing those guys up with the line is like, that's kind of scary for people, I think.
Yeah, and especially when all of them know what they're doing enough, which is the impressive
Yeah,
thing about Anderson. Like we talked about him, just playing like this was not he was not a rotational pass rusher. He was not, he comes in two outside linebacker sets on, when they're in passing situations. He was the starting outside linebacker, and when they had two in there, it was him and either Allen or Davis, and that. I mean, it was wild. Like he was carrying tight ends up the field. They were dropping him into the short zones at times. Like, and I love that he, like, when they had him on these, on zone reads or any of this stuff, like they basically just told him, like, here's your assignment, go get this guy. The rest of the defense will, if the quarterback keeps it, they'll get him. And he'd just be like, all right, and just blow up the running back like it was incredible. Go ahead.
He had a bull rush on, I don't remember what part of the game it was in, but he was lined up on their left tackle and like just almost knocked him over, just ran straight through him. It's just like he's a just complete player, like from day one. It's incredible.
Like when they had, first of all, I think SEC defensive coordinators are going to take one look at this tape and they are never going to leave him unblocked on option plays ever again. But when they did that to him, like, I don't think Alabama, like, maybe they've done it before, but Alabama usually does not have the edge defender crash the mesh on like power read or zone read or inverted V or stuff like that. They used to always just have that guy stay home and let the inside run go into the teeth of the defense.
Mm-hmm.
They've done a couple different things. Usually they don't do that, but every time Anderson was unblocked, he just crashed the mesh, and you could see the panic in Sean Robinson's eyes on TV. And then there were plays that weren't regular option plays, that were RPOs, where they did block him, and he still got there in time to blow up the mesh, which, like, is not a thing that's supposed to happen. So, his stat line, like, he had 3 tackles on the night, none for even a loss, I don't think. But I think anyone who watched it will come away thinking that the hype was warranted.
Yeah. I guess if there was one area that I don't know if we should be concerned, but the tackling at the second level wasn't outstanding.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I was pretty down on Daniel Wright after because I don't know. I kept seeing him miss tackles, and he did have more than you would want. But one, he did lead the team in tackles with 11, and two, at least the ones he missed, it was like he was there and being over aggressive and just whiffed. Like, I don't know. It was better. Like, he wasn't shying away from contact. He wasn't, I don't know, taking bad angles and getting there late and diving and missing a guy. So I don't know. I can live with that. Pat looked like Pat. Job looked great, which I was very encouraged by. I didn't notice Malachi Moore a whole lot other than the one penalty, so that's probably pretty good for a freshman star. I saw some people talking about they didn't think Battle played well, but The
I
couple of
didn't think he played bad.
yeah,
Like I
I don't
don't
know. The
remember
couple of
any.
plays I noticed him, I thought he did really well. So
Yeah.
the thing I noticed a lot about the secondary was one that they didn't play a lot of dime to begin with, which I don't know. Mizzou under Drinkwitz is probably not going to do a lot of like pure like 10 personnel stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that was dictated by personnel, but I mean they were in plenty of like four wide looks, even if personnel wise it wasn't four wide receivers. And in a lot of those looks, they didn't go to dime. They just like they played a ton of man free with battle or right deep, and the other one in man coverage on one of the receivers, which was
Hmm.
interesting. Like one I don't know. I think that's a bit of a Golding thing because I know that he liked to, especially at UTSA, even when they did
Yeah.
not have Alabama level talent in the secondary. I think they like to play man coverage a lot, and then I also think that was part of the just he mentioned in his press conference talking about simplifying things for the younger players, and I think some of that was simplifying things for the newer players in the secondary, which I, I don't know. Mizzou didn't test them a lot downfield,
I
but
think that's probably a good sign, and B, probably like why they could simplify things because Mizzou was never going to be much of a threat down the field.
yeah,
Should get more of an indication this week, uh, but
yeah. Um, that's most. The other thing, like personnel and scheme wise, was that we talked about. Uh, I think it's been talked about a lot that Dylan Moses was going to be an every down guy, no matter what role he was going to be in. Christian Harris was also an every down guy. Like I think they made the calculation that in the vast majority of situations, having him on the field is better than I don't know, bringing in DeMarco Helms at dime or having an extra defensive lineman. So, like, they had some dime looks where LeBrian Ray was the only defensive lineman, and then it was
mhm.
four linebackers and in Allen Anderson, Moses, and Harris, and then the six defensive backs in dime. So, like, that's mostly a holy crap. Christian Harris is good, but it was interesting that I don't think that's a look we've seen a whole lot of from Saban. Like, I'm not sure I've ever, I'm not saying it's not happened. I don't have an
Yeah,
encyclopedic memory of every snap, but I've never seen that before from one of these defenses. So I
maybe
thought
we
that was
can
good.
ask somebody. We can ask somebody who does next time.
Yeah, right. No, I don't ever recall that. So I thought that was really interesting that there were just some. It's fun to see that like, and I know like just enough about Golding and what he likes to do that it was really cool and really interesting to finally see that like okay this is what he's doing that's his stuff and not
Mhm.
just like the base Saban defense and it was more than I expected like it was this was in some ways uh very not a typical Saban defense even for the ways that he's adjusted over the years to kind of modern offensive schemes.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that is him, and how much of that is just the pieces that they have to work with that can afford to kind of do some of these things.
Right.
But the fact that they're doing it is means it's at least in some part him.
Yeah. I mean and like
They,
there's a reason like when he was initially hired we heard lots about like how Saban was impressed with his like schematic, not like for whatever Alabama fans want to say, and I don't know, I rarely believe in Alabama fans like general mob opinion about things, but
mm,
um, the reason this guy got a job is because Saban thought he was really good, and I don't know, it was pretty easy for me to think last year that however good of or bad of a job he was doing, we were not going to be able to judge that, and Saban was the only one that it was going to be able to, and so I don't know.
yeah, because like the defensive guys, the defensive coordinators that Saban's hired have typically been either promotions from guys that have been on the team or guys that he had worked with before
Right?
coming to Alabama. So for him to go hire like kind of completely outside the team,
Yeah, this guy who has no background in his defense,
that's it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like it. That's I mean, this is the first guy, right? Like it's never. And yeah, he wasn't the defensive coordinator right away in his first season, but he was like he was the play caller like halfway through that season. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
anything else on Mizzou? I think we covered
I
most of
wanted
it.
there was one like kind of thing we saw a lot last year too. The second and long runs still bother me. Like there's still a fair amount of second. I mean, they're effective for what it's worth.
Yeah,
They were
I,
effective on those plays, but I didn't like it at all.
I think that that's something we're just gonna have to live with Sark. Like his first year in Atlanta, the Falcons literally had the highest 2nd and 10 run rate in the NFL, and it's not going to cost him as much at Alabama. And hey, if they're throwing 60% on 1st and 10, I will fucking live with it. Like
Yeah, I'll take that
I
trade.
will take that deal. Yeah. So and in general, I thought Sark called a great game. So like
Uh,
if that is his one flaw as a play caller, like I'm not even gonna. I've chosen to. Did you see that video that was going around this summer where it was him like talking about the RPOs Alabama runs,
mm,
and he had a part on there where he was like, yeah, he was like, this is what we do. And he was like, now a lot of teams will tag this additional option, like throw the screen on the back end. But I think if you do that, if you add too many pass options, the quarterback's just going to throw all the time. And we like to run the football. We believe in running the football. And I was like, I'm going to choose to forget that this ever happened.
he
So,
had another comment like prior to last season about like wanting to run more. I was like, dude, you've got like Tua and like four generational receivers. Just miss me with that.
please stop
All
saying that.
right.
But anyway, like overall, his tenure over the past season plus one game, like I thought the design and the play calling has generally been top notch. So A&M,
Yeah.
um,
Who's this new guy they've got at quarterback this year that we've never seen before?
man,
Mon?
I saw him in College Station his freshman year in person, and that feels like it was 20 fucking years ago.
Yeah. It's like at the beginning of quarantine. Like
Yeah,
uh yeah. I mean I admit I did not watch any of their game against Vanderbilt, so I don't know if they're doing anything new this year with their offense. Uh,
nope.
but if they are, it didn't seem to go very well.
It's still Jimbo believing that he has Jameis Winston at quarterback and like I don't know. He runs this incredibly complex scheme that asks so much of the quarterback, where he doesn't like he has to know the coverage and know the checks and make the right reads every time, and there's no scheming guys open. He doesn't. It's very much an NFL style offense, which you can see how much of that is just dogma in the NFL. Watching like the Chiefs, for instance, like
Sure.
Pat Mahomes throws to wide open receivers all the time because it turns out you can still scheme people open in the NFL. Like,
Yeah.
but Jimbo does not believe in doing that even at the college level. So, and that works fine if you have a quarterback who's great at that. But like, not a lot of quarterbacks are great at that, especially at this
Yeah.
level. And Kellen Mond is not good at that at all. Like
Yeah.
he
And
has,
he's got some tools.
oh
He's got
yeah,
a he can make some pretty good like deep throw but he's not the guy that you can't do any favors for.
yeah. Like that 2017 game in College Station, he didn't start that game. I think it was Starkle that started that game, and they brought him in later, and he had a couple of just like I don't know Manziel-esque hair on fire plays where he just scrambled out and like threw a dart to the corner of the end zone that a receiver was like falling over as he caught with like a toe in bounds, and like I don't know, there was that game against Clemson 2 years ago where he threw for like 450 yards. Um, like and I don't know, every time he's played Alabama in the last two times, he's like had a 70-yard touchdown run. So like the guy has got the tools, and if you, I feel like there are so many offenses that you could put Kellen Mond in, and he would put up crazy numbers. Like maybe he wouldn't be a high draft pick, but I don't know. He's like everyone works their offenses. Like Saban's offenses have done it for 7 years now. Like and I don't know. Everyone can adapt, and work to scheme guys open and to build easy reads and easy throws. Like there are no like everybody in the country has read one guy. If he does this, throw here. If he does the other thing, throw there. Like everybody has those plays in their offense that can make it possible for quarterbacks to make easy plays, except for Jimbo. And it's
Yeah,
just
it's like you don't get extra points for for playing it a certain way. Like you don't get extra yards just because you like didn't scheme a guy open. Like
yeah,
I don't get it.
like it's and they play it literally the slowest tempo in the country, which is fine for this game because you're at a talent deficit. And as a Rice fan, I can speak to the fact that playing slow as hell is actually a good thing when you have less talent than people. But against most of the teams Jimbo plays, they have better talent, even in the SEC. And you're just you're letting randomness play a bigger factor than it should when you have better talent and you choose to slow down the game.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I will say, like, if you're gonna slow down the game, Alabama's probably the team you want to slow down the game against.
oh right, yeah.
Until you know you need to cover, and then all of a sudden, you need to run your 2 minute offense with Mon, even though you're down 20.
Yeah, right.
Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm so glad we don't have that problem.
Yeah. So I don't know, and there was plenty of talk that like this could be A&M's year. Um, I don't know if Mond had taken an additional step and if Jimbo was willing to adapt his offense a little bit, but between that and Baylor Cup being out for the season again and Javon Osmond opting out, like they have nobody on the outside. They
Mm-hmm.
have this kid Damon Demas, a 5-star, that's a freshman who didn't play in the last game, and um, so I listened to so Bud Elliott's now at 24/7, and he has a podcast with Barton Simmons, which is pretty good. And on their episode today, they were talking about that game. Bud is the person that's the go-to for like what the hell is Jimbo Fisher doing takes because he has a certain perspective on that.
Of
Um,
course.
yeah, and they were talking about this, and Barton Simmons made a point about Demas that he was kind of a guy who is like an absolute athletic freak, but was not very like polished as a receiver, and you can see why that would be a guy that wouldn't like A&M fans are like ripping their hair out wondering because he didn't play at all against Vanderbilt. And they're
Okay.
like ripping their hair out, they're like, let him play, because they have nobody at receiver. Like the guys they played against Vanderbilt had a collective like 4 catches in their careers going into the season.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. Given that profile, it doesn't surprise me that he's the sort of guy that Jimbo wouldn't play early. If he does play in this game, that could give them a potential um, mismatch on the outside. Because the other point I was going to make about that podcast is Bud is like the only non-Alabama person I've seen to make the connection that in most of their losses under Saban, the thing that's made the difference is not like people always go to the mobile quarterbacks thing. Maybe not as much as they used to, but like that was the trope for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that consistently separates is it's not mobile quarterbacks. It's not even necessarily great quarter. Oh, damn it. Yep, we're back. Sorry, Discord just does that. It's
I don't
gonna happen.
know.
Yeah, no, it's like clockwork. Um, anyway, it's not mobile quarterbacks. It's not even great quarterbacks. It's receivers who make big plays on the outside, who consistently win
Mm-hmm.
the one-on-one matchups that Alabama forces you into. Demas is maybe a guy who could do that if they get him
Yep.
in the game, but one, we don't know if he's going to play, and two, I don't know. He's an unpolished freshman and just one guy, and also Alabama's quarters are pretty good. So it's
But
hard for me to see how A&M scores in this game.
and not that Jimbo was there at the time, but that was kind of a formula for A&M in years past too, with Mike Evans on the
Yeah,
outside, and I'm blanking on who the other guy was that was really good. Um, so yeah, I don't. I mean, I would be really frustrated too if hopefully he doesn't play, but you know.
Yeah. And so, like, I don't know, their running game was explosive, but not very consistent against Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Alabama's had trouble with Mond running in the past, but I don't know. This
Hmm.
front seven is so fast and so ferocious that it's hard for me um, to see them getting much in the running game. So,
Well, and the problem with Mon in the past has not really been. It's been kind of outside the X's and O's when he's
right,
beaten.
exactly, yeah.
And I don't know if having guys like Anderson on the outside and like, the having the depth there makes. I mean, it helps, but I don't know if it means we shouldn't expect that to still kind of be a problem on Saturday.
Like I wouldn't be surprised. Like they will probably have a couple runs either by the backs who are both pretty good, or by Mond himself, where
Hmm.
they get past the first level because I don't know the blocking's good or something, and
Hmm.
then I don't know Wright or Moore takes a bad angle and it ends up being a big play or something like that. But I don't see that. I don't see any way for A&M to consistently generate yards, consistently get yards, or consistently generate explosive plays within their offense. And they don't have good enough players to consistently create outside the offense. So I don't know. And like the defense is good, but not. I don't know. They've had a couple of opt outs from starters, like
Hmm.
so. I don't know. Like I don't. I mean, the spread is up to like 20 now, isn't it? Somewhere around
Is
there.
it? I was just trying to look up what we had the number at.
Like
It
I don't see Alabama covering just because there will
it's
be
Jimbo.
there will be so few possessions that I don't
Yeah.
think they like. I don't think they're going to score a whole lot. But
Hold on, let me log in here. It's one of the few things I can't pull up on my computer because I have to be on our network. 17 and a half is the latest line, I think. We have it at like 19 and a half. But I wouldn't be surprised if that moves kind of late too.
yeah, let's see. I was trying to think like I would probably go with something like 34-16 for this game. Like I don't know. This has the feel of a Jimbo kicks a lot of sad field goals game.
Mm.
So and I don't think Alabama will get enough possessions to score like 40 plus. So I don't know. That feels
Yeah,
about right to me.
yeah.
So I guess I do have them covering 17 and a half, but
I kind of want to go with the same score from last week, like, but I'm expecting Mac to be in there for most of the game. Uh, I don't know. I don't just because of how slow they'll play. I'm just not sure if they'll ever build a big enough lead to get
right.
to see much of Bryce. But but like the later drives with Mac will just kind of be running out the clock while A&M tries to cover or catch up and cover.
Yeah.
Uh, so I don't know. Like I'm in the like 38-20 kind of range,
Something
like
like
right
that.
at the line.
Basically what the last two games with between
Yeah.
these two teams have been. So yeah. Um
Anything
so
else around the SEC we want to?
yeah, so I was thinking we might go around and do impressions. Florida Ole Miss was obviously the most pointsy game of the weekend. Um, and I'm curious, like, I don't know. I kind of clowned on the idea that Florida was the consensus pick for the SEC East last year or this year, and that does not look so crazy now. But
I was
um,
going to say I was going to bring up the fact that before the game we had it before both of their games this weekend we had Georgia at like 55% and Florida at low 40% to win the East, and that's now like completely flipped. even though they both won their games. Just given how bad Georgia looked, even though I guess Georgia's maybe getting JT Daniels back this week.
Yeah, although like I don't know how much I expect because okay, yes, Daniels was like a 5-star. He's
Mm-hmm.
started as a true freshman, but like he was not one of these guys that just lit it up when he was in there. Like he was not nearly as good for them in 2018. Okay, granted they like brought in Graham Harrell and put in the air raid, and part of that is scheme and not players. But like Keaton Slovis was way better as a true freshman last year at USC than Daniels was in 2018. So like I don't how much do we think that Daniels is likely to win the job even now that he's healthy? And if Dwan Mathis is not, not the latest savior at
Right.
quarterback for Georgia, and they have to ride with Stetson Bennett all year, like, I mean, that's great value Jake Fromm right there. Like that's
Yeah.
they're
They're not going to win the East with that.
no.
They're not going to beat Alabama with that. They're going to struggle to beat Florida with that. I don't even remember who else they have on their schedule. And they have Auburn this week. Auburn looked okay last week.
Yeah, I don't like. I would still expect Georgia to win that game because I don't like Auburn's offensive line is not good. Like they could not run the ball against Kentucky for shit. And this Georgia defense, like I don't know if I'm as high on it as some people seem. Like I know they were great last year and they got pretty much everyone back, but this is kind of like a I don't know. Kirby seems to have like recreated 2011 Alabama. And I know
Mm-hmm.
a lot of Alabama fans fetishize that 2011 defense because they were great, but like and okay, this is maybe a bad example because I don't know, 2019 LSU offense was a fucking supernova, but like I think that game was the perfect example of like you can't play a 2011 defense that's just like a brick wall but like doesn't get a lot of disruption and you have kind of a
Mm-hmm.
crappy offense. Like you can't win championships that way anymore. Like it just
No.
doesn't happen. Like somebody is gonna put points on you.
Yeah.
And so like I don't know, like if we're comparing these defenses, like Alabama's defense this year is 2016 Alabama and Georgia's defense is 2011 Alabama. And both of them are going to get points put up on them at some point. But if I'm
Mm-hmm.
playing football in 2020, then
Yeah.
I'm taking the 2016 Alabama defense over the 2011 defense. Like
Yeah.
I want that front seven that is creating havoc all the time rather than the the brick wall that allows two yards per rush but is occasionally going to get lit up on the back end. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, a really good defense is still necessary, but it's not nearly enough anymore. And there's just no indication that Georgia has anything more than that right now.
yeah.
Even if we assume that they have the defense, which the jury's still kind of out on.
Yeah.
I meant to make the joke earlier about Alabama being the second best offense behind the Ole Miss offense,
Yeah,
but
yeah, there we go.
I forgot to finish that joke.
So that's like I will be. That's what I'm curious. Like I don't know. The jury is kind of still out for me on Florida on both ends. Like they looked really good. Like Kyle Pitts is incredible, and Kyle
Yeah.
Trask looked a lot better than I have ever given him credit for before. But like Ole Miss has crazy skill talent, and they have Lane, who is one of the best play callers and play designers on earth. Obviously, we are in the tank for him on this on this program, but so like I don't know if we should be worried about their defense because some of that is just Ole Miss having great skill players and Lane being great, but also I don't know if their offense is that good as good as it looked because Ole Miss's defense is really bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I will be
Are we talking
really
about? Sorry, are we talking about Florida? Are we
yeah.
talking about? Okay.
So I will be interested to watch Florida going forward because Ole Miss is kind of going to do that to everyone this year. Like everyone's going to put up points on them, and they're going to put up points on almost everyone.
Yeah.
So
I expect every Ole Miss game to almost be appointment viewing. Like it'll be
Oh yeah,
just
it's gonna be great. They're gonna be the most
exciting.
entertaining team in the SEC this year.
Yeah, and the Egg Bowl is going to be
Like, I don't know. Everyone was already looking forward to the Egg Bowl this year because it's Lane Kiffin versus Mike
the
Leach.
personalities,
Yeah,
right?
but then I don't know. Lane did what Lane does, and Mike Leach threw for 600 yards. Well, Mike Leach's offense threw for 600 yards on LSU.
Yeah,
I'm so happy that like after that one brief incredible supernova of 2019 that like forget replacing all of the talent that Ed Ogeron has brought it like all right, we lost Joe Brady. We're going to go get another NFL guy to be our passing game coordinator. And it's fucking Scott Linehan. Woo. And then they got
you got the wrong part of that equation there. Yeah, I don't.
and then your defensive coordinator is Bo Pelini, who is like I just on the spectaculars, and we got to see it right away in game one that he's one of these guys who is just going to be like, this is the thing we're doing, and it's just going to get shredded and shredded and shredded, and you're not going to adjust at all. They sat back in two-man the entire game against Mississippi State and just got shredded the whole time. Like they didn't have anybody playing the rat on the crossers in mesh, and they just got torn up on mesh like 800 times in a row. And it's I was listening to the shutdown. I was listening to the shutdown fullcast today, and it was like I think it was Holly made the point. It was like, wow, who could have believed that Mike Leach wouldn't change a fucking thing about his offense? Like who could have predicted this?
He's only been at like 4 schools and run the same 7 or 8 plays at all of them. Like, what film were you watching? Like, I don't know. Yeah, that was
like they played Washington for like 7 straight years and scored like 14 points on them every time. And literally, Jimmy Lake would do interviews and like openly mock them because he'd be like, they do the same shit every time, and we figured it out 4 years ago, and we have better talent than they do, and they can like it's just. They would like rush 3 and drop 8 and just let the quarterback make a mistake, basically. Like
yeah. I had serious whiplash watching Miles Brennan after watching Joe Burrow last year. I also had similar whiplash watching their defense. Well, I mean, I guess early part of last season they played Texas, and that was kind of a bloodbath for them. But by the end of their season last year, their defense was incredible.
When they were all healthy, they were playing really well on defense. Like it was not like I don't know, the best LSU defense of the last 10 years, but they were more than good enough when they were all healthy, and like they had plenty of glitches over the year, but like by the end of the season they were playing more than well enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I don't know, Brennan was not horrible, but like you just saw how much that offense last year depended on Burrow being as incredible as he was. Like this was not they didn't do some incredible thing scheme wise. They just had really transcendent skill players and like the perfect mix of play calling and skill sets and all these things, and you just I don't know. You can't just trot it back out there and expect that to happen again.
Mm-hmm. I will say, like we were talking about, so the Georgia Auburn game. I agree. I think Auburn's offensive line is kind of a problem. But on the flip side, like Bo Nix doesn't make a ton of plays from the pocket. I mean, he makes some, but it seems like when he's making the plays, it's because it's either designed or he's been flushed out and is like just making play. So I'm not saying Auburn's going to win, but I think that could be a problem.
It's going to be an ugly one. I think is the main thing you can take, because like Auburn's not going to be able to run the ball at all, and I don't know. Can they make enough of an offense of Bo Nix scrambling and throwing jump balls to Seth Williams to win this game? I mean, maybe. Like Georgia's offense is terrible, so you get into that ugly of a game, and all it takes is 1 or 2 plays. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't be like I would still probably pick Georgia in that one, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it go either way because that is not going to be pretty.
Is is Florida the team you would least like to play in the SEC? The like if you is Florida the second best team in the SEC right now?
Yeah, I think you have to go with that at this point. Like I said, I still think there's a lot of uncertainty with them because I think the game they played against Ole Miss is the game that everyone is going to play against Ole Miss. But
Mm-hmm.
judging by the sample set we have to go on so far, if Georgia doesn't make substantial improvement at quarterback, then I think you have to go with Florida.
Yeah, I agree, and I think well, I was going to take it a step further and say Auburn might end up being the third best team in the SEC. Um, I like. I mean,
Yeah,
I think their defense is really good again, and I kind of think Malzahn like for games where he needs to drop a game plan and the Auburn Magic, like I don't know. So I'm not.
and Bonix did look improved, like he had made substantial improvement as a passer against Kentucky. Like he's still not. I don't know. I would say even in the upper echelon of passers, and even in
Mhm.
this sort of quarterback weakened SEC this year.
Yeah.
But he is better than he was last year, and that is meaningful. So um, we'll see about Auburn's defense when they play a team with a pulse on offense, because I don't know, Kentucky is still one of those teams that kind of cobbles together points out of ugly offense, and we're
Yeah.
not going to learn much from them playing Georgia either. So we'll see what happens when they play somebody that can, I don't know, like has well, Kentucky's offensive line is pretty good, I guess, but somebody that can like really throw the ball.
Mhm.
We'll see what Auburn has, but I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up that way. Like it's closer between them and Georgia than I thought it would be for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
Uh,
any, anything nationally? Like I'm trying to think. Like we haven't seen Clemson much. We won't see Ohio State for a while.
the Big
No other
12 looks
team.
terrible,
Yeah,
just like
Oklahoma's not going to
collectively
be.
awful.
Yeah, I don't like. There's really not another team in the playoff picture that outside of the ones we already know about.
Yeah. Like as far as the Big 12 goes, I don't think like nobody's out. Like, we've made grand proclamations about like when Ohio State lost Virginia Tech in 2014. It's like the Big Ten is out of the playoff in September. Like nobody's out yet, but like judging by what we've seen from Oklahoma and Texas, nobody is getting out of the Big 12 with less than 2 losses. Like I don't think there's any way that happens, and you're not. I don't know. They're not getting through with this. Like it's much more likely that you're going to have like Alabama and Florida than
Hmm.
one of those teams getting in.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, and I don't know. We haven't seen Clemson play anyone real yet, and we're still a ways off from the Big Ten. So
Yeah.
hard to draw playoff picture conclusions at this point. So
I mean, the only thing I was looking for was to see Rattler, and I just don't think like their defense isn't any better than it's been, and
it might be
he's
worse. It's
yeah
like they,
somehow
I mean, they had some opt outs, so which is they don't have the talent on defense to begin with, but like they look bad on not just by like normal Oklahoma standards of it's not nearly as good as their offense and normal Big 12 standards of I don't know sometimes you just get put on you, but they were not good. They were very very bad against
yeah.
Kansas State. So
And if Texas had taken care of Texas Tech like they should have, like maybe they're in a good place, but you just can't struggle with Texas Tech like that. Like
yeah,
that's a bad
and like
sign.
maybe that ends up being one of those just like Big 12 weirdness games that tends to happen even to their best teams, but that I don't know. I'm not I'm not betting
Wouldn't
on
bet on
them
it.
to run the table from this point out. So
Yeah. So what did we land on? Sorry, what was your score for the Alabama game?
oh
38.
34-16.
Okay. All right.
somewhere in there.
Dope.
All right, I think that will do it for us this week. Uh, we'll be back next week to preview. It's gonna be Ole Miss then, so
I'll miss
yeah, it's
previewing a Lane Kiffin game.
oh, it's so good to have you back, Lane. It's maybe not gonna be fun for us to watch on the 10th, but every other game of his, I'm going to. It's gonna be a point. Well, not that I'm not gonna watch it, but it's gonna be appointment television for Ole
Yeah.
Miss this year. A lot of fun, like the upper echelon of the SEC might not be as good as we thought this season. Like LSU's worse, Georgia's worse. Um, so it's probably just like Alabama and Florida and Georgia and Auburn, and then but there's like I don't know, there's a bigger like middle class of decent teams than I thought that
Mm-hmm.
like some of that's the teams you expected to be really good being worse, and some of that's the bad teams being better. So there's going to be a lot of I think there's going to be a little like fun weird games this year, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to a lot of it.
Yeah. Same.
Well, all right, so that'll do us for us this week. Roll Tide, and we will see y'all later.
Roll Tide.